always had an affinity for the eerie and the mysterious, but my fascination with the macabre truly took hold when I stumbled upon a forum known as Creepy True Cemetery Stories. It was a place where people from all over the world shared their most disturbing and inexplicable experiences in graveyards. These stories range from chilling to downright terrifying, and I couldn't get enough of them. One evening, as I browsed the forum for my nightly dose of spine-tingling tales, a particular post caught my eye. The title read, "The Whispering Trees of Willowbrook Cemetery." Intrigued, I clicked on it, and the story that unfolded was like none I had ever encountered before. The author of the post, a user named Silent Watcher, described their visit to Willowbrook Cemetery, a place shrouded in local legends and urban myths. Located on the outskirts of a quiet, forgotten town, Willowbrook was known for its old, decaying graves and an unsettling reputation. It was said that the trees within the cemetery whispered secrets of the deceased to anyone who dared to listen. Silent Watcher's account began with a sense of trepidation. They had always been fascinated by the paranormal and decided to visit Willowbrook Cemetery one fateful night with a group of friends who shared their morbid curiosity. As they entered the cemetery, the moon cast an eerie, pale glow on the tombstones. The air was thick with an oppressive silence, broken only by the crunch of gravel underfoot. Willow trees loomed over the graves, their branches twisting into grotesque shapes that seemed to writhe in the moonlight. The group ventured further into the cemetery, the air growing colder and the silence intensifying with every step. They couldn't help but feel as if unseen eyes followed their every move. Silent Watcher and their friends had heard the stories of the whispering trees, but they assumed it was merely local superstition. Their skepticism soon waned, however, as they reached the heart of the cemetery. That's when they encountered a massive, ancient willow tree. Its gnarled branches reached out like skeletal fingers, and they could swear they heard a faint, mournful whisper on the wind. Silent Watcher's account grew increasingly unsettling as they described how the whispering seemed to intensify around the ancient willow tree. The leaves rustled softly, like a secret being exchanged between the living and the dead. The sensation was so overwhelming that they could barely breathe. It was then that Silent Watcher realized that their friends had grown pale and rigid with fear. They too could hear the whispers, and the stories they had dismissed as mere folklore suddenly took on a sinister reality. The trees were speaking, and they seemed to be sharing the secrets of the long departed. The group decided to press on, driven by equal parts fascination and dread. They couldn't resist the urge to unravel the mysteries that Willowbrook Cemetery held. The trees continued to murmur, their voices growing more insistent, as if imploring the group to stay and listen. They moved further into the graveyard, the darkness closing in around them. The tombstones appeared more weathered, and some were so old that they had crumbled into little more than fragments. It was as if the very earth had reclaimed the forgotten souls. As they walked deeper into the cemetery, Silent Watcher noticed something strange. The whispers were now accompanied by soft, mournful melodies, like a ghostly chorus lamenting the passage of time. The source of the sound was unclear, but it seemed to emanate from the tombstones themselves. Their friends were on edge, the eerie atmosphere taking its toll. They spotted a mausoleum in the distance, and its presence was like a beacon, pulling them closer. Inside, they found themselves surrounded by dusty coffins and the suffocating scent of decay. The whispers grew louder, the voices overlapping, making it impossible to discern the words. In the dim light, Silent Watcher thought they glimpsed something moving among the coffins. Shadowy figures darted in and out of view, leaving a trail of fear in their wake. The group's heartbeats quickened, and they couldn't shake the feeling that they were intruding upon something beyond human understanding. With trembling hands, they retreated from the mausoleum, but the whispers and the shadows pursued them. They felt a presence closing in, and the graveyard seemed to come alive with phantoms that yearned for their attention. As the group reached the exit of Willowbrook Cemetery, the whispers reached a crescendo. It was as if the trees and the tombstones were mourning the departure of the living, and their voices filled the night with sorrow and regret. They fled from the cemetery, their minds haunted by the experience they had just endured. Silent Watcher's story sent shivers down my spine, and I couldn't help but be captivated by the eerie tale. The way they described the whispers and the mournful melodies made it feel as though I had been there with them, surrounded by the unsettling presence of the graveyard. I couldn't resist the urge to investigate further. The story had mentioned Willowbrook Cemetery by name, and I was determined to experience the haunting whispers of the trees for myself. I decided to make the journey to that quiet, forgotten town, accompanied by a friend who shared my curiosity. As we entered Willowbrook Cemetery, the moon cast an eerie pallor over the tombstones, just as Silent Watcher had described. The air was heavy with the weight of silence, and the branches of the twisted willow trees loomed ominously in the darkness. With each step, I felt a growing unease. It was as if the cemetery itself was watching, waiting, and listening. The legends of the whispering trees were etched into my mind, but I couldn't help but wonder if they were nothing more than folklore. As we approached the heart of the cemetery, we found the ancient willow tree, its branches reaching out like skeletal fingers. I strained to hear, and there it was, a faint, mournful whisper carried on the wind. The same sensation of dread and fascination washed over me, just as it had for Silent Watcher. My friend and I exchanged a look, and we could see the unease in each other's eyes. The whispers grew louder, and it was impossible to deny that the trees were speaking. They seemed to be sharing the secrets of the long departed, just as the stories had claimed. Driven by equal parts curiosity and fear, we pressed on. The whispers continued, growing more insistent, as if they beckoned us to stay and listen. The cemetery seemed to come alive, and the air was thick with the haunting voices of the dead. As we ventured deeper into the graveyard, the tombstones grew more weathered and some had crumbled into fragments. It was as if the passage of time had blurred the line between the living and the deceased, the whispers accompanied by mournful melodies as if a spectral chorus lamented the forgotten souls. We spotted a mausoleum in the distance, and its presence drew us closer, like a moth to a flame. Inside, the dusty coffins and the scent of decay created a suffocating atmosphere. The whispers grew louder, and it felt as though the very walls of the mausoleum were speaking. In the dim light, I was sure I saw something moving among the coffins. Shadowy figures flitted in and out of view, a trail of dread in their wake. My heart pounded, and the realization struck that we had intruded upon something far beyond human comprehension. The voices of the dead echoed around us, the whispers intensifying with every passing second. My friend and I exchanged nervous glances, our breath shallow and rapid. The shadowy figures seemed to be growing bolder, drawing closer to us. It was as if the very souls of the departed had taken notice of our presence and were drawn to us like moths to a flame. In the flickering light, I could discern their features, pale, ethereal faces with hollow eyes that held a profound sadness. Their movements were graceful and otherworldly, as if they defied the laws of the living. They reached out to us, their fingers brushing against our skin like a chilling breeze. A sense of impending doom weighed heavily on my chest. I knew we had to leave, to escape the clutches of the graveyard's spectral inhabitants. My friend and I stumbled backward, our footsteps echoing through the mausoleum as we retraced our path toward the exit. The whispering grew more frantic, as if the spirits were agitated by our departure. The shadows pursued us, and the sensation of being watched and pursued was inescapable. The air grew colder, and the branches of the willow trees reached out, seemingly blocking our path. We fought through the gnarled limbs, the whispers growing louder and more desperate. It was as if the very essence of the cemetery resented our intrusion and was determined to keep us within its grasp. The darkness closed in, and the voices of the dead echoed all around us. The whisper seemed to linger in the air like a haunting melody that refused to fade. Our minds were left in turmoil, forever marked by the haunting encounter with the whispering trees of Willowbrook Cemetery. The island was a desolate, windswept expanse of land, and at its heart stood the Lighthouse of Despair. It was a towering structure of dark, weathered stone, its solitary beam of light cutting through the thick veil of darkness that shrouded the island. For generations, it had been the responsibility of the lighthouse keeper to ensure the light never wavered, for the waters surrounding the island were treacherous, hiding jagged rocks and submerged wrecks. My name is Samuel, and I had been the lighthouse keeper for the past 10 years. It was a solitary existence, but I took pride in my duty. Every night, as the sun set and the sea swallowed the island in darkness, I would ascend the winding staircase to the lantern room, where the great lamp stood, casting its beacon far and wide. But as the years passed, the isolation began to weigh on me. The constant howling of the wind, the relentless crashing of waves, and the haunting cry of seabirds became a cacophony that echoed in my mind. The only respite from this desolation was the occasional visits from the supply ship, which brought me provisions and news of the outside world. One particularly stormy night, as I climbed the staircase to the lantern room, I noticed something strange. The lamp was flickering. I approached it, my heart pounding in my chest, and examined the delicate gears and mechanisms that kept it running. Everything appeared to be in order, but the light continued to waver, casting eerie, dancing shadows across the room. I spent hours trying to fix the problem, but the light would not stabilize. As dawn approached, I finally gave up and collapsed into an exhausted sleep. When I awoke, the light was still flickering, and I knew I had to take action. Desperate, I reached out to the mainland for help. The supply ship was due to arrive in a week, but I couldn't wait that long. The flickering light posed a grave danger to any ships that approached the island, and I couldn't bear the thought of being responsible for a tragedy. I sent a desperate telegram pleading for immediate assistance. 2 days later, a small boat arrived from the mainland carrying a lighthouse technician named Thomas. He was a grizzled, weathered man with a no-nonsense demeanor. He examined the lamp and the mechanisms, but like me, he could find no apparent cause for the flickering light. "I'll need to go up to the lantern room to get a closer look," Thomas said. As he ascended the staircase, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was deeply wrong. The island had always been a place of eerie quiet, but now it felt as though the silence itself was watching us, waiting for our every move. I followed Thomas up to the lantern room, and as he examined the lamp, he muttered to himself about the strange behavior. Suddenly, he turned to me with a look of concern. "There's something unusual about this," he said. "I've never seen anything like it. It's as if the light itself is resisting our attempts to fix it." As he continued to work, a strange sensation washed over me. It was as though a presence in the room had grown stronger, and a cold dread settled in the pit of my stomach. The wind outside began to howl with an unnatural fury, and the sound of waves crashing against the rocks took on a sinister, almost mocking quality. With a final, frustrated twist of a wrench, Thomas proclaimed the light fixed. He stepped back, and the flickering ceased. For a moment, relief washed over me. The room was filled with a brilliant, steady light, and I thought the crisis was over. But then, a deafening, otherworldly scream pierced the air. Thomas clutched his head and fell to his knees, his eyes wide with terror. The light in the lamp exploded in a blinding flash, and the room was plunged into darkness. I could hear Thomas muttering incoherently, his voice a mix of fear and madness. I stumbled back, searching for the staircase in the pitch-black room. The wind outside had grown into a tempest, and the waves crashed against the rocks with a deafening roar. The island itself seemed to tremble with malevolent energy. In the darkness, I could hear Thomas's voice growing louder and more deranged. He rambled about ancient curses, vengeful spirits, and the sins of the past. I knew then that something beyond our understanding had been awakened, and it hungered for us. I made my way down the staircase, guided only by my sense of touch. The storm outside raged on, and I could hear Thomas's voice growing fainter, his words consumed by the maddening wind. As I reached the bottom of the staircase, I emerged into the ground floor of the lighthouse. The room was filled with an eerie blue light that seemed to emanate from the walls themselves. I felt a presence drawing closer, an entity that defied the laws of the natural world. I stumbled toward the door, desperate to escape the lighthouse, but as I reached for the handle, a hand made of shadow and mist closed around my wrist. The touch was as cold as death, and I knew that escape was impossible. The entity spoke in a voice that echoed in my mind, a voice filled with ancient sorrow and malevolence. "You have awakened me," it said. "For your arrogance, you shall pay the price." The last thing I saw was the image of Thomas, his face twisted in agony, as the entity's grip tightened, and the world around me dissolved into darkness. The storm outside raged on, and the waves continued to crash against the rocks, but the lighthouse of despair stood silent and empty, its beacon extinguished. The island had claimed its keepers, and their fate remained a haunting mystery to all who gazed upon the desolate expanse of land.